for some people, it's very frightening to get up in front of a group, whether that's a group of 5 people or 50 people. Their hands start sweating and they start sweating. They forget what they were going to say. They start to stutter and their thoughts all get jumbled. But when I work with somebody like that, and we go from that all the way to it's usually an 8-week program for the one on one coaching. And then when they're getting ready to go on stage for their keynote or their industry presentation, they are so excited and pumped. And to me, watching that transformation gives me so much joy.
This episode of The Recovery Couch is brought to you by Greg Swartz at Remax Victory and Affiliates. If you're looking to buy or sell a home, Greg brings heart, hustle, and honesty to every deal. Call Greg at 937-477-8975 today and tell him The Recovery Couch sent you. Hey, welcome back to The Recovery Couch, where we deliver unapologetic, raw, faith-based stories and messages covered by the blood of Jesus. This is a space where we speak from the heart without filters, because Psalm 139:4 reminds us that God knows our words before we ever speak them. And Romans 5:8 tells us that while we were still sinners, Christ died for our sins. That's why the Recovery Couch exists, to meet people exactly where they are, because here we believe when you offer someone a space to be real, you're also offering them a space to heal. Today, I'm honored to welcome a woman who spent more than 3 decades helping leaders find their voice and use it with purpose. Mary Van Dorn has coached executive leaders to the master of art and communication from the stage, and equipping them not just to speak, but to move hearts, to inspire action, and to call audiences forward. Her training, insight, and passion have helped countless leaders rise, stand confident in their message, and step into the influence God has placed on their lives. Mary, thank you so much for joining us, and welcome to the Recovery Couch. How are you doing today?
Thank you, Brendan. I appreciate that. I am doing absolutely fabulous.
So, Mary, when you think back over your 3 decades of coaching leaders, what first stirred your passion for helping people find their voice?
I started because I was teaching a night class, actually in mortgage banking. And that really gave me the first introduction to teaching and coaching. And I learned to use the skills I learned educating in night school, because then I wanted to go develop sales in the mortgage banking. It's a long story I won't get into now, but I was stepping into the sales part of it. And I thought, I'm going to speak to bigger audiences. I can't go door to door, knock on realtor doors. That's going to take me forever to build a business. So I started to put on larger presentations to big offices and then industry events and what have you. And I built my sales team tremendously that way. I mean, that was my main way of doing it. And people started to come to me and say, how do you do that? How do you get up in front of all those people and talk? Well, how I did it was I was a single mom and I needed to make a buck and I needed to make it quick. And so that was my real motivation to start. Um, and it came easy to me in a sense that because when I was talking to my audience, whether it was CPAs or realtors or community groups, I really had a message that I wanted to share. I was passionate about the work I was doing, and I knew I was really good at it. And I would be doing a disservice to people if I didn't share my message and get them to come to me. Sometimes they didn't, and they'd go elsewhere. And then sometimes they'd come back and say, oh, I should have come to you in the first place. So I became really passionate of making sure that they understood exactly what they were getting when they came to me. And when people started to come to me and ask how I could help them, I thought, well, this isn't that hard. And for some people, it's very frightening to get up in front of a group, whether that's a group of 5 people or 50 people. Their hands start sweating and they start sweating. They forget what they were going to say. They start to stutter and their thoughts all get jumbled. But when I work with somebody like that, and we go from that all the way to it's usually an 8-week program for the one on one coaching. And then when they're getting ready to go on stage for their keynote or their industry presentation, they are so excited and pumped. And to me, watching that transformation gives me so much joy. And I also love I have some organizations here locally. They're homeless shelters for women. And I will go in there and work with those women on presentation skills, because the skills that I teach for you to relate to an audience, whether that's 50 people or 500 people, it's the same skills you can use on your one-to-one daily conversations. It's the same way of connecting with people. You're going to connect with your audience as if you're connecting with each and every one of them. You're going to look at them. You're going to try to speak to the person that needs to hear your message. And sometimes you might be speaking to 50 people, and there might be only two people there that really need to hear what you have to say. And if you connect with them, you have been successful because that was the purpose of you being there. I always tell people too, when your heart is on service, you can't be nervous. When you're going out to truly do what's on your heart, that just rests there. Just let it rest there. And you don't have to worry about anything else because you know you're going to be delivering from there. And then I think a lot of the fear goes away.
Yeah, I had a follow up question, but just hearing that makes me want to ask you a different question. So, in part of your training and your one on one coaching, you're not only teaching them how to speak more professionally on stage, but it sounds like you're offering encouragement to be courageous. What parallels are you drawing from scripture into that courageousness, trying to help them believe that they're good enough?
I lean on a few of them. And to be quite honest, Brendan, I'm not somebody, I have my Bible is within 4 feet of me, but I'm not somebody that can quote scripture, to be honest with you. But I
Yeah.
have my feelings. I know, like when the Lord said, I am who I am, and I am in you. And then I think to myself, when I go to get up there, if God is in me, then all things are possible. I can do anything. He's right here in my heart and soul. I'm going to step up here and let it shine. There's no reason for me to doubt anything because I wouldn't doubt him.
And that was really that's the mind frame I try to approach everything with today. It took me a long time to grasp that, but that's a really good answer because we shouldn't fear. Sometimes I do still, though, when I get on the stage, Mary, but you've helped leaders move audiences to action. And there's a big difference between speaking in front of an audience and the audience hearing what you're talking about. But you help leaders move audiences to action. How do you do that when you're coaching somebody one on one?
Some is we have to show the audience how you can help them attain what they need. What is their pain point and what is it that they really need? And you have to be able to show them how they can do that. And you can do that by telling your own stories. You can use testimonials. But when you learn to tell the stories so that they can see that you have, especially in your case, where you have been where they are and you have gotten out of that. And then they can see that that gives them hope. And that's the first thing that they need is hope. Now you've instilled within the hope. Also, while you're speaking to them, we talk about ways to get them to, in a very short time, you have to get them to like you, to feel that you understand them, and then they'll trust you. And that you have to do in, 15, 20 minutes. So okay, they're liking you, and now they see that your journey connects with theirs. Now maybe I can trust you. So what are you telling me I can do? How can you help me? Okay, that's a very concise way of putting it, but that's really what we're trying to do.
No, yeah. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. How can you get your likability to land on the audience, and from there, you're almost storytelling, and you
Mhm.
want to take them through a good story. Am I gathering that correctly?
Stories are huge. I do complete presentations on telling a good story, on being a good storyteller. And it's something that we are all very naturally gifted with as being a storyteller. As children, you look at a 2-year old that's trying to explain to you why they should have a lollipop before dinner. And they can be very convincing, and nobody taught them how to do that. It's just that as we've grown up, people have kind of told us to be quiet or keep it to yourself or what have you. And so we don't share that emotion and that energy as easily as we did when we were younger. So it's just helping people draw that out is huge in the storytelling. And the other thing that stories can do is we want our audience to feel that we are inferior to them. Like maybe where they're sitting, they've never been as low as you. So in that case, we're a little bit inferior to them. We also want to feel like we're equal so that they feel like we're right here. You and I can connect. And then we need them to feel that you are superior to them. Not that you're better than them, but you have overcome. So when you can connect in those three levels, that's when people are starting to really lean in and listen to what you have to say.
Wow, that's a very detailed algorithm. It sounds like that you've mastered throughout your years of speaking, teaching, and now coaching. What's the difference, Mary, between a speech that sounds good and a message that truly resonates in an audience's heart?
I think it's connecting with that audience, letting them know that you care about them and that your message here is to help them in whatever the pretense is that you're there, right? They want to know that you relate to them. They want to feel like at the end of the show, you and they could go out and have a cup of coffee and have a great discussion. Like they want to connect with you in that sense. And so sometimes we get up and it can be a great speaker and they can have all their success stories and all their testimonials, but they leave the audience feeling like, well, yeah, he did it, but that didn't help me do it. Right? Not that we're going to be able to take them on that entire journey, but they have to know that you can take them on that journey.
Relatability, likability, these are words that I'm relating to what you're saying. How do you coach someone to stay authentic as opposed to maybe a performing version of themselves when they're speaking?
I would say the short answer is in their storytelling. When we tell a story on stage, let's, as an example, if you have maybe 20 minutes on stage, we're going to say probably going to try to get across three things, 3 points that you want to make. So we have to lead into that and we have to do a nice transition between the first, second, and third so that it's a smooth, so that they're following the story. We don't want to lose them. Um, when you start to tell a story, you're going to tell, people think you have to tell the whole story. You don't. You just have to tell a scene. And in that scene, it has to be really good. You want people to see what you're seeing, hear it, feel it, smell it. Is it cold? Is it hot? What kind of noise is out there? Like you really bring them into that scene. And that's where we're going to really connect with them, not to tell the whole long, drawn out story. So being really concise with your words. They say that 55% of your presentation is your body language. 38% is your tone. How do you use your tone? Up and down, fast, slow? Do you use an accent in parts? I mean, there's a lot of ways we can use our tone. And then 7% is your content, is the words you're saying. What that speaks to me is that you have to be impeccable with your words. And sometimes people say to me, I just need 3 bullet points and I can get up there and do it. I'm like, man, you are wasting so much good. You only have 7% to get that message across. You have to really write that speech out, practice it, practice it. I'm not saying it has to be memorized, but it has to be very well rehearsed because you don't want to lose them. And if you start going off on a tangent, and it doesn't have to be far, every 8 seconds, we have to engage them one way or another, whether it's moving with your body and what have you. There was a study done. They had um, reviewed the top 50 TED Talks. Of the top 50 TED Talks, the ones that landed in the bottom 50% and as far as higher ratings, etc., in 1 minute, they had approximately 223 or so, low 220s movements, whether it was a hand movement, a nodding, a hand gesture, 220. The ones in the top 50% had over 470 movements in that talk, in that 15-minute talk. Now, that sounds like a lot, but it's not. If this is a hard screen to do that on, right? In this little square here. But when you're on a stage, you can turn this way, you can walk 2 steps that way, but you have to keep moving because our brain works that way. So if you're going to keep them engaged, you're going to be telling your stories. That's your body language. You're going to have the 7% contact. When you start bringing all of that in, that's what makes a speaker somebody that people are not going to go into their phones with, right? They're not going to stop looking away because they don't want to miss it, right?
So, up to 93% of a good speech is going to be tone inflection and body posture. So, it sounds like almost and both of those, almost all that 93% is going to require some sort of confidence. How do you attribute confidence into your coaching curriculum when you are teaching somebody speaking?
Well, sometimes we have to take baby steps in the beginning to get that confidence to come across. And we might not start with working on their keynote. There might be other things that we're going to work ahead of time, getting them more comfortable in front of the camera, getting them more comfortable to talk about themselves. Um, Traditionally, men are not willing to be as vulnerable on stage as women are. That is changing a lot more now because we're getting some really great speakers out there, and men are seeing other men being a little bit more vulnerable. It just means that everybody in the audience is going, "Oh, okay, now he's real, right? Now I can understand he is really like me, right?" The other thing is, keynote speakers were always men for so many years, and women are becoming more and more prevalent on stage, but it's still mostly men. But women are in business, like in finance. There's more than 50% of wealth managers are women now. So if you're a man and you're getting in front of a group that is 50-50, you really want to be able to relate to them. And being vulnerable opens you up. And I'm not saying you have to spill all your dirt, but you just have to open yourself up so people can see who you are.
I love that, Mary. That's been a key theme since I've really started rolling my sleeves up and getting serious about healing in my own life. Vulnerability has been one of the key words that continues to be at the forefront of the discussion of what does it look like to heal. And it sounds like even when you're speaking, the relatability of the speaker can you can plant the seed of relatability with vulnerability. I like that a lot. Do you believe, Mary, that learning to use your voice can be a form of healing? Speaking of healing, and if so, how have you seen that play out with some of the people that you coach?
Absolutely, especially with it's quickly obvious to me with some of the women that I work with in these shelters because they're getting ready to go out on a job interview and they might not have a lot of confidence. And we go through some exercises there that are a lot of fun. And sometimes it's just me one on one. Other times we do it in group sessions. And the women are more supportive. And when they see one another doing it, then they become more open to it and they become more confident to realize that, hey, people are relating to me. As you know, in group discussions, when people open up, you open up to those people yourselves because it, they're more like you. You see that they're no different than you, and we're all going through the same sort of things. So it's the same thing when we work in small groups and starting to build confidence that way. And understand in those groups too, a lot of it is they're not going to do a big presentation, but they have to go into a job presenting themselves and why they are the best candidate for that. So building that confidence, we get to do that in some of the workshops that we do as well.
So cool. So it sounds like vulnerability allows not just the speaker, but the audience to feel safe in the space. And then once the speaker is vulnerable, the audience can connect. And that's where the cup of coffee that you were talking about at the beginning of the conversation comes into play, where the audience members feeling like, man, I could really go have a cup of coffee with Mary or Brandon. I love that. I love how you tied that in. Have you ever watched someone's personal story? And this is relevant to me here, Mary, this question. Have you ever watched someone's personal story become the very thing that unlocked their leadership and their influence?
Quite a few times, quite a few times. Um, yeah, I can tell you, I coached a gentleman one time, and I joked because I was introducing him on a stage one time, and I said, his business is helping people plan an exit strategy for their business. So it's very numbers oriented. It's very black and white. It's very methodical. And he was giving a keynote and he wanted help with that. So when we started to talk about it, and like I said, we need to open up who we are and tell who we are. And that was absolutely nothing of the sort. And I said, even his website, his colors were black, white, and gray. And he had no social media presence. He didn't even have a LinkedIn presence. And he his business was generated by word of mouth. which is wonderful. And business brokers would use him to help with their clients. But now he wanted to expand that. So he needed to get out and talk. And he said, well, I don't do anything. There's nothing I do. And I said, do you have a family? I don't want to talk about my family. But we talked about different instances in his life. And then he found a way to bring about and talk about his couple of daughters. And he just lit up. He just lit up when he started to talk about him. So we found a way of bringing small stories in that actually tied back to his business. And then and he actually opened with one of those stories because he was a little bit nervous. And I said, let's get it out of the way. Let's get one. And then as soon as he did, his audience laughed and he completely relaxed. And then he knew, Mary was right. They do kind of relate to me a little bit more quickly this way. So it was, it is a lot of fun when we work it that way, but definitely opening up that vulnerability. And also, I had one woman that reached out to me because her husband was CEO of a very, very large corporation. And she said, he's got to give his state of the company address in January. And she said, it's a bore fest every single year. He's been doing it 15 years. So she convinced him to work with me that year. It was much different than anything he'd done before. And at the end of his talk, it was a corporate meeting, and I think there was probably about almost 400 employees there. And they actually gave him a standing ovation because he talked about his family and how the business had served and whatnot. And they never saw that side of him, never. And he called me and said, Mary, I can't thank you enough. I've never felt so connected to my company, to my employees. I mean, they came up and he said it's a completely different company. And now, of course, he's going to use all of that, those tactics in communicating with his company employees.
Gosh, I love that. Yeah, that's amazing. He humanized himself and
Mhm.
he was received better because of it. When I think so often we read all these books on the 15 different ways to get better, and then we become tactile in our approach and we lose our ability to humanize ourselves, be vulnerable. And what I'm hearing you say, Mary, is that's typically when we're able to be vulnerable as the speaker, where that's where the audience is going to relate the most. Let me ask you this. What do you believe people are really listening to when someone steps on a stage to speak?
That's a really good question. I think they're listening. I think they're looking for a golden nugget. They've come here to listen to you for some reason. They chose to sit in that room and they're hoping that you have something to share with them. They're not expecting 20, 30 minutes of a waterfall of things. That's overwhelming and that doesn't help. Keeping it simple and maybe having, like I said, in 20 minutes, typically three things points you really want to make well. Because after they leave there, they're going to remember the stories. That's the lesson they're going to remember. People are 22 times more likely to remember facts if they're rolled into a story.
I love that, and that's not the first time I heard that, Mary.
Mhm.
I've many of the people who have God's placed in my life as mentors or consultants have told me the importance of being able to tell a story. One guy, he's in movie production. He said the best story in the room always wins, and for some reason that stuck with me, Mary. And that's what you're saying here. So let's talk about you a little bit. Tell the audience where they can find you, your coaching, how they could go about it, how a first session looks, how many weeks they would be in a session if they hire you on, all that good stuff.
It's real easy. It's just maryvandorn.com. And there they can find the different types of coaching, whether it's corporate coaching, one-on-one coaching, or workshop coaching. That's all available there. Typically, the one-on-one coaching is 8 weeks long, one session a week. You get homework, and it's very interactive. It's a lot of fun. Some people come to me and they have their keynote ready to go. Some people come to me and say, I want to talk about this. We have implemented how to use AI without having AI write your speech because then it's not going to be your speech, but still use it to help us kind of formulate and work through it. Because also another thing that people don't always realize is you can write your speech. AI can write it, can help you write it, what have you. But when you stand up to speak we speak much differently than we read and how we write. So, but we
Let me
we
add
like
to
to use
that.
our.
Yeah, there's been times where I've had AI try to improve my storytelling and my speech, and then I'll say it out loud, Mary, and I'll go through, and I'm like, that's not how the audience will know. That's not my tone. That's not how I talk. So I'm scratching out a lot and then writing in different words. Is that a type of practice that you would use with somebody who's generating through AI?
Yeah, or what you can do is you can talk. When I talk to AI, I don't type anything in. I'm lazy. I just speak it all in. But I could say, put this in bullet points for me. These are the thoughts of what I want to make sure I put out. I tell it, do not write a script. I just want bullet points. And then I let it give me the bullet points. Then I'll take that and transfer it to a document. And then I'll play with that and putting in the words. And I do that with my clients too, that we'll work. Okay, here's where we're going to put the story. The other thing that's really important when you have, in this case, I'm going to say, if you have the 3 points that you really want to bring out in your presentation, and you have your stories, and you have to weave those stories into the lesson. And then a big thing is between the story and the lesson, the next story, you have your transitions, and they have to be really smooth. AI is not really going to do that. I haven't seen it do that well yet.
Right. Well, and take us back a little bit. You talked about you need to captivate the audience every 8 seconds. Is that some sort of study? Is that like scientifically proven that the audience is listening for 8 seconds? Can you give us a little more depth into that?
It used to be that, and they do this in, excuse me, film school and what have you, that you'll see the scene is never on there for more than 12 seconds. And it depends on what we're waiting for. We're waiting, so it might stay a little bit longer. But now with social media and everything happening so quickly, our brains are starting to look for some kind of movement every 8 seconds. And it can be something even like you turn your head and you come back. It keeps your brain attention by having some sort of movement there.
So this is like neurobiology 101 with you know the access to so many dopamine inducing
Yep.
cell phones and whatnots. The brain is looking for something to produce stimuli every 8 seconds. Is that what I'm gathering?
Yes. And if you think about this, Brendan, if you're sitting at you're having coffee with your friends or you're sitting around having a glass of wine or beer with your buddies and you're all talking and telling stories, there's nobody sitting there for more than 10 seconds without moving. Everybody's got a story going. They're leaning in, they're saying no way, they're shaking their head, they're moving their hands, something's happening. So it's actually just being more natural and relaxing enough that you can be that way.
I like that. Yeah. So let me ask you this, Mary. What do you coach? How do you teach somebody who needs to recover if they get on stage and the worst possible scenario happens? What is your recovery technique for somebody that needs to recover from a flub in a speaking engagement?
Well, first of all, you prepared that speech, you practiced it over and over again. You went on that stage, you might have lost your train of thought. You didn't have your notes, or the tech went down and you lost your teleprompter or what have you. You had to finish it. The number one thing is nobody in that audience knows what you didn't say. Like, they don't know what they missed because you didn't say it. All right. Second of all, a week from now, nobody is going to remember that talk. Nobody is going to remember that you flubbed. I was going up a flight of stairs one time on the side, and my heel top step was higher than the others, and my heel caught it, and I, went into it felt like slow motion. I'm not gonna fall. I'm not gonna fall. And I stood up and I didn't face plant, but I just kind of looked back and I thought I could not reproduce that if I tried. And I said it out loud, and it was a laugh, and I was fine. I got there from then. I'm sure nobody from that convention remembers the lady in the red dress that fell. They don't remember it. If
Yeah.
you forget your lines, if you stutter, if you use the wrong name, it doesn't matter. They're not going to remember it. And all it is for you is that's practice. It's practice. It's practice. There's,
Gosh,
and
yeah, I
it
love that.
happens to the worst of them. Who's that guy? John Maxwell. He's like makes, I don't know, millions and millions of dollars a year speaking all over the world. His first talk, he wanted to do better than his friend who said, He watched his friend, and at 3 minutes, he lost it and just walked off the stage. And he said, I'm going to last longer than him. So he went up with his notes a week later and did it. And on the way home, he asked his fiance, well, how'd I do? She goes, well, you lasted longer than Fred. And he goes, well, how long did I last? And she said, 55 minutes. It wasn't the plan. He was so nervous, he kept going through his notes. I'm sure the audience was fast asleep long before that. But the point is, we all are going to go through these things. So almost if it happens, you go, yes, check, that's one done. And now that won't happen to me again. I'll make sure I have this backed up or that backed up. Or you say, okay, yeah, you know what? The world didn't fall apart. Stage didn't collapse. I wasn't swallowed up. That's fine. They didn't throw tomatoes at me. I'm fine.
They didn't throw tomatoes. I didn't get a big hook coming from the side of the stage pulling me off. What, Mary, would you like to give as we're coming close to our time here? What advice would you like to give to a young speaker early in their career? Speaking engagements are just coming their way. What type of advice would you like to give them?
I think the most important thing you can do for yourself is to practice. I would say practice it on camera and then watch it, turn down the volume and watch it and look at what your body language, do it on your cell phone, stand 6 feet away from it and watch yourself and see what you're doing and see where you can improve on that. And then
Very good.
turn it on again and don't look at the picture and just listen to it and say, if I'm just listening to it, am I listening? Am I hearing any inflections? Am I slowing down? Am I speeding up? I mean, how am I using my voice? Is it monotone? Am I putting my audience to sleep? So those are two things you can do on your own. And of course, you could practice in front of other people too. And some people are actually afraid to practice in front of family than they are strangers.
Mary, that's great advice. Gosh, I have so many notes I need to take on this topic. I want to thank you so much for coming on the Recovery Couch. Let them know one more time where they can reach you to get any speaking opportunities, coaching opportunities, anything that they can get through you. Where should they go?
Thank you, Brendan. It is simply at maryvandorn.com.
MaryVanDorn.com. Please go and check her out. Just a brilliant mind and a heart to help other people. And I love that. And I'm so grateful for having you today, Mary. Don't forget to go check us out on our YouTube channel. Check us out on LinkedIn, any social media. Listen to the podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. Like, comment, link, subscribe, and remember that you always have a seat right here on the Recovery Couch. This episode of the Recovery Couch is brought to you by JB Davis at South Dayton Toyota. For integrity, service, and unbeatable deals, call JB and his team at 513-267-5225 and tell them the Recovery Couch sent you. As we close today's conversation with Mary Van Dorn, we're reminded that every voice carries purpose, and every story, no matter where it begins, has the power to move hearts and call people forward. Mary shared with us that connection, vulnerability, and authenticity aren't just communication tools, they're bridges that turn words into impact. She taught us that confidence is built through practice, that leadership is unlocked through honesty, and that golden nugget that someone in the audience is searching for, it may be hidden inside your own journey. Here at the Recovery Couch, we believe that when you show up real, God shows up powerful. So wherever you are in your process, whether you're stepping onto a stage, whether you're stepping into your calling, or simply just learning to trust your voice again, remember this: recovery isn't just about what you're leaving behind. It's about what you're being called into as well. If this episode spoke to you, share it with someone who needs it. Give them the reminder that their story still matters. And as always, I want to thank you for joining us here on the Recovery Couch, a place where we meet people right where they are, and we walk together toward healing, purpose, and hope.